We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
It seems that once again, we, the public, are being asked to ignore reality in favor of pre-approved infographics, courtesy of the White House communications team, when it comes to the economic status of the United States. Well, to help us dig out the truth from the spin and figure out what's really happening behind the curtain, we're joined by economist and author Andrew Moran, who has a weekly column on LibertyNation.com called Swamponomics that specifically dives into the economic fallacies touted by those supposedly in the know. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So it seems to me, Andrew, that there's an economic and informational propaganda war taking place. The administration seizes on one factoid and disregards everything else in order to put a positive spin on this presidency. Now, this is an age-old trick, but am I right in thinking it's going into overdrive under this administration?
Yeah, it really is. You saw that at the recent press conference when he was talking about how to rein in prices and he's talking about competition. You know, he's completely devoid of any reality when it comes to economics. And, you know, you think that his people who surround him, who are economic professionals, they should know better. I think a great example of this is when it comes to meat prices. You know, he points to one fact, which is the meat industry is consolidated. I think four companies control about 80% of the market, whether it's pork, whether it's chicken. And he says this is the problem of why prices are so high. But if you dive deeper into it, that's not really necessarily the case. There's so many factors driving up meat prices. But at the same time, I mean, if there was a conspiracy to price gouge consumers, Big Meat would have done this a long time ago, even before the pandemic. They would have dramatically raised the prices. Or what they could have done too is that they could have undercut their competitors too. If everything was completely under their control, they would have just undercut their competitors, gained a greater control of the market. But that's not the case. You know, it's just all these different factors. You have the weather conditions, fertilizer prices are sky high, transportation costs, the global supply chain crisis, the labor shortage. So no, it's not, I think my recent article was talking about how reality bites. And I think that the reality is Biden, or I should say the lack of reality is in the Biden world. But what's amazing is that Brian Deese, he's the director of the National Economic Council, and he was talking this last summer saying, oh, you know, inflation would be high if you don't count the things causing inflation. And he was also making the case that, oh, well, price inflation is coming down. But he's looking at the same data that everyone else is looking at, whether it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation data or the IRI supply index numbers. This guy's looking at everything we're looking at, but he has a completely different understanding of it. These guys are professionals. What they should know better.
Three blind men looking at an elephant. Now, I want to dig deep into a couple of the recent claims made by the White House, now, and obviously promoted by President Biden and Jen Psaki as press secretary. Now, the first one came out this week, and it reads, President Biden has grown the economy faster in decades and added 6.4 million jobs, more in 1 year than ever on record, end quote. So there are two bits of information here. One, that the economy has grown faster than in decades, and two, that Joe Biden has added 6.4 million jobs to the economy. As it stands, both of those things are technically true, but not really. What are the lies and the obfuscations here?
Yeah, well, so there's so many things to go into that. So the first thing is that when we talk about economic growth, of course the economy is going to grow if you're opening doors again. I mean, that's been the case since President Trump reopened the economy last summer. So that's not necessarily surprising. What is surprising is that you're juicing the economy with all this trillions in new fiscal spending, all this trillions in monetary spending. You know, if I can paraphrase Hillary Clinton, you could ask, why isn't the economy growing at 25% per quarter with all this money being put into the economy? And then on the labor front, you know, yes, 6.4 million jobs were returned to the economy. It's not new job creation. It's not net new job growth. I wrote this recently in one of my Swamponomics columns. These are all economies coming back from before the pandemic. If you look at the real numbers from before the public health crisis, the economy is still short 3 to 6 million jobs, depending on which estimates you're looking at. So that's also fallacious. Also, another important point too is that I was looking at this recent study that came out from Wallet Hub. It's a personal financial website, and they monitor all these jobless claims and labor data. And they found that of the top 10 states with the quickest unemployment rebound, it's been 9 of them were red states, and then the bottom 10 for the slowest unemployment rebound, 8 of them were blue states. So it's not President Biden creating all these magical jobs with, he just, he's this entrepreneur creating business left, right, and center. It's just that, a lot of these red states, they have better tax policies, they have less red tape. They're intervening less. I mean, when you look at the whole Biden agenda, it's hard to say, oh yeah, he's creating all these jobs unless it's from, the government and, he's subsidizing these industries, which costs, I remember during the Obama years, they had the green, this green economy. And I found that, of all the jobs he created, under the green economy, cost taxpayers $200,000 per job.
It's very easy to say that, I've brought an extra $1 trillion into the economy when you've spent two. Very easy to do. I could do that. I could probably get you a better deal as well. Now, another recent White House message sought to portray the president and the vice president in a very, let's call it, a caring and giving light. It reads, the Biden-Harris administration announced today that $100 million of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding would be used to help American families pay their outstanding heating and cooling costs. End quote. Now, I can see your face here, Andrew, and for those of you just listening on radio, it's a doozy. I can figure this one out myself. The administration destroys energy independence, causes massive price spikes, and then robs the taxpayer to gain a few, let's call them empathy points. Is that about right? What's your analysis?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely correct. Energy prices were coming down, before this pandemic. Trump facilitated an environment of more production, more exploration, and you saw that with the prices. Natural gas was so low, crude oil was crashing. So a lot of houses were saving tons of money with cheap energy, and what's interesting too is that the U.S. was creating all this oil and all this natural gas under themselves, not relying on foreign oil. I remember writing this article a couple of years ago. It was a study published in the National Bureau of Economic Research, and it found that I think before the years 2005 and 2010, natural gas prices cratered 42%. Of the households that relied on energy, the winter mortality rate fell 2%. Because of all this cheap energy, more people were consuming affordable energy and not going to the cold. Now we're having this these massive winter storms, these massive snowstorms. It's freezing. You have a northeaster coming up. So all these people are spending more money on energy because of the fiasco occurring in the Biden administration. I'm not one to always say politicians are the result of this or the cause of that, but Biden was probably a main factor to these higher energy prices, at least domestically, because he could have said to the nation, hey, oil and gas companies, drill, baby, drill. I was writing in a recent article of mine, again, I'm promoting myself, but, I was saying, would inflation be as bad under President Trump? Inflation would be elevated. There's no doubt about that. He spent and borrowed and, so much monetary expansion.
With the best of them, yeah.
Yeah. But he would have most likely encouraged oil and gas companies to drill, baby, drill. When he left office, before the pandemic, there was about more than 13 million barrels per day being created by U.S. oil and gas companies. Today, the number is around 11 million. These companies are not drilling or not producing as much because of this whole regulatory uncertainty and this green energy agenda by the Biden administration. So, domestically, oil and gas companies have the resources. Prices are should be incentive right now for them, but they're not doing it because of Biden.
Absolutely. Now, final question for you, Andrew, for me. Is the American public buying the spin?
Not necessarily. If you look at all the numbers, let's say, for example, you're looking at the recent Conference Board Consumer Confidence Index, that eased in January. It didn't ease as expected, but it still eased from the previous month. If you look at the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, that fell off dramatically. There was a bit of a bump in November, but in December it just plunged. If you look at the Federal Reserve Board of New York's survey of consumer expectations, majority of people say inflation is going to remain elevated at 6% over the next year. They think inflation is still going to be above 3% in the next 3 to 5 years. If you look at another number in that report, they showed that at least a quarter of households think their personal financial situation is going to worsen. Half say nothing's going to change; it's not going to be better or worse. So all the numbers point to. Actually, one more thing too. CNBC, they published a recent survey with another polling company, and they found that entrepreneurial confidence the economy has also been waning quarter over quarter. So overall, all the various statistics that that I'm sure the administration is looking at shows that a lot of Americans are bearish on the economy. Is it as dire as they expect? I don't know. It's what they say, what they view. Sarah Cowgill, one of our correspondents, she told me that politics is perception. So if people think the economy is on the downturn, of course, no matter what you put in front of them, they're going to say that, and then they're going to vote your keisters out of public office.
Well, as Joe Biden heading into 2022 might be channeling Journey and Don't Stop Believing. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
After this short break, we tackle affirmative action on the court docket. Has a 50-year pendulum come full swing? Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.